Hi, my name is Jesse Pullman, and I'd like to thank you for joining me in our dystopian reality. Today, we're going to talk about something that most people have some understanding of, but very few people grasp the modern mechanics of: the monopoly. Now, I know what you're all thinking. A monopoly means the exclusive control of a commodity or service in a particular market, or a control that makes possible the manipulation of prices, so says dictionary.com. But we all understand that one company controlling an entire industry isn't a good thing for the economy, nor for, you and I. And we know that there are laws against this. There are reasons there are laws against this. Let me take you through one of them, and maybe it'll surprise you. Let's talk about Standard Oil. Standard Oil was a company founded by business legend John D. Rockefeller in 1870. By 1890, it had effectively conquered the American oil industry, controlling nearly 90% of the sector. Political cartoons, such as Udo J. Kepler's Next, provided a visual representation of just how powerful Standard Oil was. It was eventually dissolved by the Supreme Court in 1911 in light of antitrust legislation. So, that's the end of the story. That was the last monopoly, and that's all we ever saw of Standard Oil, right? Right? While it's true that Standard Oil was broken up into many pieces, they seem to find a way back to each other. Sunoco, Chevron, Exxon, maybe you've heard of Pennzoil. Parts of it are owned by BP. These companies are all children of the same parent, Standard Oil, and they all still have incredible power in their market. But is that the way that all monopolies have gone? Are there new, modern monopolies that maybe we don't see because they're even better hidden than what Standard Oil became? And now it's time to take a shot at the company everyone loves to hate, Comcast. Disclaimers. 1. I am not a Comcast subscriber. I don't even think it's in my area. 2. I have friends who work at Comcast, and since I know the whole internet is watching, and since I know Comcast is the great Satan of Gaben's despair, these friends are good people, and a lot of the bullshit associated with Comcast's customer service reputation comes from above the average working stiff. Never forget that. Direct your disdain appropriately, please. With that out of the way, let's start with Comcast's ownership of NBC Universal. With that comes ownership over both NBC, a major broadcaster nationwide, and Universal Pictures, a major film distributor nation and even worldwide. If you're a big fan of MSNBC and you're not quite sure why they don't spend enough time talking about net neutrality or pointing out how big internet providers might be a problem, look at the letters. NBC. It's owned by Comcast. Comcast also owns Xfinity. It owns Xfinity? Wait, that means that it is in my area. I'm sorry, I guess I was wrong in my disclaimer. Oh, it owns Xfinity, which is, again, part of where we're going to with this whole discussion. Just you wait. Back to it. Comcast also has a sizable 32% stake in Hulu. Hulu, as you probably know, is a direct competitor to Netflix, which is why articles about how Netflix is down-throttled or being forced to pay more for access to Comcast network, and they're not alone. Verizon is also a guilty party in this. It's why these things are relevant. The math here isn't hard. If you control the network that videos are streamed over, you can control, to a large extent, how much it costs to stream the videos. you can charge Netflix an extra fee to access your network or to get top priority on it. Whereas with your pet project, your 30% stake in Hulu, you can give it that access for free. Or you can make sure that it is the fastest, best looking stuff on the net and make Netflix less reliable just to make sure that your competition doesn't have a fair chance. If you think that's strange, how about Comcast Spectator? Through this subholding, they own the Philadelphia Flyers, and I mean the hockey team here. They also own or heavily sponsor 30 arenas in North America alone, to say nothing of any other global holdings they might have. Last but not least, they own Ovations Catering, which, as you might imagine, is the company you will be buying your food from should you go to a Flyers game or to anyone else. Is that questionable? Well, it depends. If you're talking about business practices, no. If you're talking about ethics, clearly, yes. Oh, and they also own Fandango, which probably feeds into the Universal Pictures side of the business. Now, some of you may have already known a lot of what I've put out. You probably knew that Hulu and Comcast were related somehow because of why Netflix's issues with them has been such a big deal. You might have known that Comcast owned NBC Universal, but did you really know about Comcast Spectator? If you went to a Philadelphia Flyers game and you didn't like the food provided by Ovations, would you know that it's Comcast? Would you know that if the Flyers put out a bad team, and I don't know much about hockey, I don't know if they do, it's Comcast that owns them and should be doing a better job of running them? But that's just it. The modern-day monopoly wants to obfuscate where the real ownership lies, where the responsibility lies. There are horror stories on Reddit and other internet sites about people having 6-hour-long customer service calls trying to cancel their subscriptions to Comcast. And those are all valid. But in doing so, you're focused so much on a company you're not going to use anyway, or the idea of incompetent service. You're trying to think about the other things that they put in. You get mad at the tech support guy who's just like us. He's probably working as hard as he can against a system he knows is against him. And again, I have friends that work for Comcast. I know. But you're upset at them. And if you're a high flyer tech person, you're not using Comcast anyway. But for the average person who gets frustrated on a phone call, you're not thinking that this is all some sort of sinister corporate plan. Is it spelled out that way in Comcast bylaws? Can I prove this to you in writing? Probably not. Maybe somebody who's done more research than I have, maybe they can. But it all smacks of hiding the identity. Just like Standard Oil broke up into all of these different companies, they've recombined. There might be 4 or 5 Standard Oils. At one point they were called the Seven Sisters because there were 7 of them. But looking at it from a different perspective, do you want to be that one big company that has a kick me sign on your back, or do you want to have lots of little aliases you can use whenever you need to get something done and share all the checkbooks? Think about that for a minute. Penn & Teller's Bullshit was one of my favorite shows, formerly on Showtime and hopefully picked up someplace, anyplace else. They did this kind of research for real, and on their first episode of their 8th season, they looked into Varsity Brands, a major cheerleading company. If you're confused by the giant clusterfuck spiderweb on the screen, let me explain. In many ways, Varsity Brands is a granddaddy of Comcast's puppet string scheme. They create independent safety bodies that govern cheerleading. They create marketing companies that produce the uniforms for cheerleading. They give accreditation classes for their coaches, all under the auspices of Varsity. Again, Penn & Teller really explain it in great detail, but it just serves this whole machination as a way to make sure that cheerleaders and cheerleading parents can't be sure who is responsible for what happens at a cheerleading event or how things are organized. all of which helps avoid accountability and ultimately repercussion. The giant octopus is dead, but its smaller children crawl around, coming out from underneath its corpse to latch onto us and strangle us once more. But knowledge is a weapon. If you know that Xfinity is owned by Comcast, and you have issues with Comcast, don't sign up for Xfinity. If you or your children are investigating cheerleading as a potential thing to do, consider whether or not you're going to be in the best hands. Make sure your coaches are actually good at coaching. If you're buying gasoline from BP, from Exxon, from Shell, know that there might not be as much competition as you think, and that maybe the reason why the prices are all the same down the block is because they're all run by the same people, 3 or 4 generations removed, but the same people. I'd like to thank you again for joining me in this dystopian reality. Have a nice day.
Wow.